Good morning. Welcome to SSUC. Welcome to all of us joining the circle this morning for the first time or the first time in a while by way of our website or our YouTube presence or part of our circle here in this room. Welcome to all of you to this place of spiritual exploration, to this place where we welcome diversity and acceptance, where all ages, sizes, colors, abilities, cultures, sexualities, gender expressions, religions, many or none, are welcome. In this wildfire season, we're going to recognize right off the bat how many folks around us in our communities in Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, are living with anxiety around those fires, with fires burning around their homes or properties. And we recognize also the hard work of firefighters and pilots and ground crews and all kinds of people helping people that are displaced in the temporary shelters. And so this morning, as we gather, may our hearts be together for the stress and for all of those people feeling displaced and dealing with destruction affecting so many this weekend. In that spirit of care and compassion, we're invited to open ourselves, not just to the depths of what we ourselves need, but to the depths of the needs of the world and our broader communities. Let's enter this time with minds and bodies and hearts open to each other, recognizing that kindness, compassion, love are the foundations, the values upon which we want to build the lives we wish to live. So, as we gather this morning, welcome to this place.
Good morning, everyone. As Chris has just mentioned, we are all welcome here this morning. We are together in this circle, all of us shining the light of the sacred within us. And as spiritual seekers, we seek today new expressions of that light. Together this morning, as we learn who we truly are as lights, may we awaken to the awe and wonder of this world, to the wonder of our existence and the wonder of our place in the midst of it all. And may we see ourselves as lights in the world. Let's rest in who we are together this morning, but let's also open ourselves to this very moment. And may the lighting of this candle this morning remind us that we're not alone in our journey, whether in person or through a screen. We are lights united in community. Today, as we seek wisdom for thriving through the transitions of life, to become all we can become, we do as we do each week in the center of our circle. We begin by lighting our candle.
third morning. I'll invite us now into a moment of acknowledging the land that we gather on, a really intentional time to arrive here, arrive wherever you find yourself this morning. So you might place your feet on the floor and really feel that we are here. We are on Treaty 6 territory, which has been the traditional gathering place, traveling space, living space for a number of Indigenous communities over time immemorial. For those of you who are here, we're on Amiskwaciy-Waskaheganik, which is known as Beaver House Hills or Edmonton. And we take time today with acknowledging this place and this space, knowing that land is all around us and that we see its grief and we feel it today as we watch wildfires move through Treaty 6 territory. We hold space for how that's part of an ongoing legacy of colonization. And so we bring intention to this moment of knowing that we gather on this place through part of that history, and that we are continually invited into moments of transformation or change or better future.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Stevenson, and I'm co-chair of the Moving Forward Towards Reconciliation Committee, and that's why I'm going to just say a few words this morning about the red dresses that you see hanging up around our church. May these red dresses displayed today remind us all of the epidemic of violence that is occurring in this time, in this country, in this city, towards Indigenous girls, women, two-spirited, gay and lesbian, and transgendered peoples. In Canada, Indigenous women are assaulted physically and sexually and robbed 3 times as often as non-Indigenous women. In Canada, our country, Indigenous women are 12 times more likely to be murdered or missing than any other women, and 16 times more likely to be murdered than Caucasian women. In Canada, Indigenous women continue to be overrepresented in our prisons. In Manitoba, in 2014-15, Indigenous women made up 86% of the prison population and only 14% of the female population of Manitoba. In Canada, there are more Indigenous women and children living in poverty and Indigenous children in government care than women and children of any other ethnic group. I'd like to read to you from the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The final report is titled Reclaiming Power and Place and was published on June the 3rd, 2019. It's available on the internet. This is a message from Commissioner Quokka Robinson. As a non-Indigenous person, I must acknowledge the significance of the welcoming, respect, and kindness that I, like others, have graciously received from Indigenous communities throughout the National Inquiry. I acknowledge that for many Indigenous peoples, however, welcome, respect, and kindness is not what you receive when you encounter government agencies and the Canadian public. Through this process, I have come to more fully understand that the Canada I live in and enjoy is not the Canada that Indigenous women, girls, two-spirited, lesbian, gay, trans, and queer people's experience. In the eyes of the state, through law, policies, and practice, we are not seen or treated as equals. There continues to be a widespread denial of rights and dehumanization of Indigenous women, girls, and transgendered, lesbian, gay, queer people. This denial and dehumanization is the foundation Canada is built on and upon which it continues to operate today. It is the cause of the violence we have been called upon to examine. She goes on to say, we must all be active participants in decolonizing Canada. We must challenge all institutions, governments, and agencies to consciously and critically challenge the ideologies that govern them. We must critically examine our system of laws and governance to identify how they exclude and oppress Indigenous peoples. We must challenge and call on all leaders to protect the humanity and dignity of Indigenous peoples. And when these leaders fail to do so, we must hold them accountable. I hope that today we can all spend some time reflecting on commonly held stereotyping, especially the idea that Indigenous peoples and their culture are inferior, which we often find in educational systems, religious systems, and especially in the media. May we reflect on the findings and the work of the National Inquiry and find ways that we can make positive changes to the future for Indigenous women and girls and all Canadians.
Our time for all ages is here. I welcome anyone who wants to come to the carpet today. I've got a story for you. Hi, Tyler. Today, I want you to help me tell this story a little bit. I have the book with me, but I thought it would be better if we just look at the pictures on the screen, and that way we can kind of share this storytelling together. This is a book called Beginning, and it's by Shelley Moore Thomas and Melissa Castrillon, or something like that. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about how you think each page might go. There's a little pattern that you're gonna see, and maybe you'll be able to help me. The end of a seed is the beginning of a flower. Does that make sense? Because you plant a seed, right? And then pretty soon it's not really a seed anymore. It grows into a flower. Right, okay. So here, maybe you can help me with this one. The end of an egg is the beginning of A chicken. Yes, you did it. Okay, amazing. That's good. Okay, how about this one? The end of a caterpillar is the beginning of a butterfly. Yes, yes, that's it. Okay, you've got the hang of this now. How about this one? When a peach ends, what begins? It's gone. No. What's left when you're done a peach? Yes? Maybe you can grow it. What would it grow into? A peach tree. Yes, you did it. When a peach ends, a tree can begin. Oh, my turn. When a sunrise ends, pancakes begin. I like that one.
No, I don't get it.
Well, there's...
Why do pancakes look like mustard on top of mustard?
Well, Tyler, that's a good question, and I don't know what the artist is thinking when she draws her pancakes. I don't know. But so what this story is saying that when sunrise ends, that means it's morning. So then maybe in the morning, pancakes can begin.
Wait a second.
Well, let's keep going. This is another one I'll read to you. A walk ends where the playground begins. Oh, so they walk to the playground. See, so when their walk is over, the playground begins. I like that. Okay, you help me with this one. The end of alone is the beginning of? Together. Yes, that's very good. The end of the beach is the beginning of? Maybe. What's it say? The sea. Yeah, you had it. You're right. You know what? There's no really one right answer to these. There's lots of good answers. Ooh, this is a hard one. The end of a path is the beginning of home. Very good. That's right, Tyler. She is smart. When a sunset ends, the starlight begins. So when the sun goes down, you can see the stars. How about this one? When a bath ends, what begins? Maybe? Squeaky clean. Squeaky clean begins. Let's see what this says. When a bath ends, pajamas begin. Oh-ho. Not if you have a bath in the morning. Okay, here's my turn. A story ends where dreams begin. I wonder if this person is dreaming of the thing that they read in the storybook. I wonder. This one I think you can do. The end of today is the beginning of? Tonight or tomorrow. Both work. This one says, is the beginning of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Ooh, lots of tomorrows. So, this author says in the book, never fear an ending. It's all part of living and changing and growing. Sometimes it's easy to get scared of when things end. But this book is like a birthday party. Who wants that to end? It's a bit sad. But the end of one thing is always the beginning of a new thing. As each journey ends, new adventures begin. Where will you go? What will you be? Who knows? When this book ends, your story begins. Well, your story's already going. You're writing your story every day. Every day that you do things, something new is happening. Also, when this book ends, Kid Spirit begins. So if you'd like to go to our children's program, you're welcome. Daisy and Ariane are there and ready, and you're welcome.
We're going to breathe. Oh, great, you're already doing it. So again, you could come into this space, you could place your feet on the floor. And today we'll know that transition or change or shift is built into our very nature. In fact, we only ever stay in one space for one breath. Each inhalation transitions into exhalation every single time we do it. So we breathe in, we breathe out, and just like that, we have transitioned again. We breathe in, we breathe out, we have transitioned again. We breathe in, we breathe out, and yet again another transition. Our capacity for change is built into our very nature. It is part of who we are, and we are always ready to breathe in again something new and exhale.
Our wisdom reading today comes from the book of Thomas, chapter 20, verses 1 to 4. And Thomas 96. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us what the spiritual life is like." He said to them, "It's like a mustard seed. It's the smallest of all seeds. But when it falls on prepared soil, it produces a large plant and becomes a shelter for birds of the sky." And from Thomas 96. The spiritual life is like leaven, which a woman took and concealed in 50 pounds of flour until it was all leavened in order to make large loaves of bread. These are the words of a first century community discovered in its Coptic translation in Egypt in 1945. We find wisdom for our living.
Well, I thought I would start today by talking about a chameleon. We know this animal, distinctive, highly specialized group of reptiles are the chameleons. We know them for their distinctive look, particularly for some chameleon species that change their colors, the colors of their skin. Some are able to vary just a little bit, different shades of brown. Others are able to vary their color and pattern through combinations of pink, blue, red, orange, green, black, brown, yellow, turquoise, purple. Amazing creatures. We also know the chameleon as a descriptive behavior of us humans. When I was an awkward teenager, I think that I might have been a chameleon. I had different groups of friends, and I wasn't really sure how I belonged to any of them. My school friends were into particular things, and this will tell you all exactly when I was this age. They were into Atari and Intellivision video games. I hung out with them and I learned the language of video games. And then I had a group of friends at swimming that were all about hockey and sports. I knew how to understand and talk that language too. Meanwhile, I was learning music, wanted to excel at that, and immersed myself in that world, and that was a completely different language and group of friends. Who was I? If you asked me that at that time, I would have said, I have no idea. Which one of those Chris's in those different groups was I really? I don't know. I felt like a chameleon trying to blend in, to code myself to my surroundings, to fit in, to belong, to be cool. That's not an unusual experience. This idea of discovering who we are is particularly acute in our teen years, all of us, trying to sort out our place in the world. At the time, I think I felt like I was the only one in that place, because that's why being a young person is so awkward, because we feel like we're the only one dealing with this and we dare not speak to anyone about how we're feeling about it. It felt like, it can feel like you're the only one who feels out of place, or like you're pretending, or just testing out what feels right. As it turns out, we all experience that. We all come to places where we can ask, who am I? We only, though, realize that with time and experience and age. And we also come to realize that those questions about who we are, about testing out what feels right, finding our place in the world, don't end with adolescence, do they? The transition between childhood and adulthood isn't so contained after all. The journey we take between dependent and independent, and then interdependent, this move we make from immature to mature, and maybe back again a few times, isn't limited to our age or a time in life. The process of learning who we are and becoming our most real and authentic selves may start in adolescence, but it certainly does not end there. And so this life transition is more of a life work. This work of evolving and learning, of discovering who we are and becoming, always becoming, of growing hopefully more and more ourselves and realizing what it means for us to be us and in relationship to the world. The wisdom from our tradition shared this morning has some interesting things to say on this topic. And not surprisingly, it's wisdom buried in the beautiful language of short sayings and tiny little parables. I've chosen, by the way, to read these parables, thanks to Joanne for reading these parables from the Gospel of Thomas. Again, words you can find on the internet, but probably if you dug out the Bible, if there's a Bible to dig out on your dusty bookshelves, won't be there. Because in the scholarly evaluation of all the places that these two stories appear, and some of us have heard these little tiny parables before. They appear in a couple different places, in different Gospels. But of all of the places they appear, the ones in the manuscripts found just in 1945, these are perhaps the truest that we know to how these stories would have been told in the years before, well, I'll just be blunt, before the church and the constricting confines of creed and belief got their hands on them. Which is why it was an amazing discovery in the mid-1900s to find these texts in a form that haven't been through the rigors of the church fathers as they were. So, a life of depth is compared in the first story to a tiny bit of yeast that gets mixed into a large amount of flour. Not all of us are bakers, but this would be, as I understand it, standard procedure. Add a little yeast and a few other things to the flour. And you don't need a ton of it. Yeast, its potency is such that it's enough to leaven the entire batch of bread. In other words, it never takes a great deal to make a difference. The idea that it requires only small doses of the goodness, of the spirit of love, of the hope of newness to begin a change that can encompass our whole experience is right there kind of on the surface of this story. You don't have to dig too deep. The yeast in the flour metaphor talks about this idea, like what Zoe introduced to us. Every time we inhale and exhale, we are changed. Our own growth and impact doesn't often require wholesale changes, though it feels that way. If I'm feeling like my life needs change, if I'm feeling stuck, if I'm feeling any number of things, sometimes the temptation is to think, it's a big job. This is a major renovation project. But this wisdom tells us that often our lives, a whole new life doesn't require us to tear down everything to the foundations and rebuild it from scratch. It doesn't require a whole new recipe. It only takes perhaps one small ingredient. It only requires that small inner voice or small step or a hint of something that dwells within us to impact what comes next. Be it our example, our words, our acts, it doesn't take a lot to make a difference to the direction of our lives or a relationship or a decision. I'm learning that one of the most important phrases that I can utter lately is, I'm listening. Because sometimes I hear it, I process it, I fail to let something come out of my mouth to let the person know that, oh yeah, I'm processing it. It can come across as, you didn't hear me. I'm learning that tiny little phrase, I'm listening, I'm thinking, makes a huge difference. This is just one tiny little example from my life this week that is a bit of yeast in the flour of my life. In chaos theory, in physics, they talk about the butterfly effect, and although this isn't as grand as what this theory was once thought, it still is a theory that it's the phenomenon whereby a tiny localized change in a complex system can have large effects elsewhere. They used to say, the flapping of a butterfly's wing here in this part of the world might cause a tornado somewhere else in the world. Well, it's not quite like that. But in complex systems, a small change here can make a big difference somewhere else. I learned this the hard way when I was laying laminate flooring. If that one panel is just a little bit out here, you might think, well, it's okay, it'll solve itself. No, it doesn't. It becomes a large problem later on. When I ask who am I at various times in my life, when we all do that, we don't have to think about who we are as one fixed thing, as one puzzle to be solved. We who struggle to be in our growing years isn't exactly who we knew ourselves to be as young adults, which isn't exactly who we know ourselves to be as we mature. And it doesn't happen overnight. I still recognize my awkward 13-year-old self. I still see him in me many times, but I also recognize where and how that person has learned and grown and evolved. Not a different person, any of us, but rather a complex and wonderful mystery that evolves, like yeast working in its dough and creating new facets of ourselves to discover. So the wisdom here, we don't grow up overnight, so let's not expect ourselves to make change and transition overnight. It happens like yeast, gently, slowly working. Now, I'll just quickly talk about this other little saying, because it's quite similar. The depth of a life well lived, a spiritual life, and a world as it could be, is like a mustard seed. This story isn't quite as serious, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of a fun glimpse, because this saying, even through the translations and the 2 millennia between it and us, we can still see a little playfulness, a little kind of sense of humor in this story, and I'll tell you why. Because Jesus is comparing the spiritual life and the journey to this seed that is so small. The mustard plant is anything but grand. And it's one of those subverted expectation kind of things that you sometimes read from the mouth of Jesus. The mustard plant is really an annual shrub. It's a weed. It grows at the side of roads. It's not often a cultivated plant. And the fact is, if there was a story about what it's like to take this journey and make this journey, we would expect to say, it's like a tiny acorn that grows into a mighty oak, or, a seed that grows into the tall cedar. There were expectations that, you start small and before you know it. But it doesn't. It doesn't go that way at all. You might think it should start that way, but like so much of the Jesus tradition, it subverts expectations. This is counterculture. So the message is the evolution and growth of this movement of love, this life of value, is a modest affair. It's rarely about huge revelations. It's not often about big moments where the sun streams through the clouds and the choir sings, "Ah." I haven't had many of those. I don't know about you. No, it's saying no to a new world order happening with fanfare and thunderclap. It's saying no to changes and transformations that are noisy and bombastic. Nope, this is a life that is about small things that are pervasive and often unrecognized. A weedy plant among all the others. Did you ever think you'd be compared to a weedy plant? Well, happy morning to you. A tiny seed that nonetheless grows into a healthy, ordinary shrub. Small but not insignificant. Still, there's a purpose to this plant. Not only does it create more mustard seeds, but it creates a place of shelter, a place of shade for creatures. For us, an evolving and meaningful life that demonstrates its own determination. In our small, weedy plant existence that doesn't have these thunderbolt moments, there is still purpose. There is still change. We still long for health, and we find our roles and our meaning. I find that to be quite good encouragement for our lives, actually. Sure, there are times when we're chameleons, feeling out the world around us, trying to just blend in. But as we learn and grow and know more and more about these small discoveries of ourselves, to know that through all the changes and circumstances of life, we are still evolving. We are still bubbling away like that warm, yeasty bread proving on the stove. We're still finding these small discoveries within ourselves, growing ever closer to who we are becoming, bit by bit by bit. They're small steps, our growth and evolution, but they're important ones. So if you're feeling like your life is not where it needs to be, it's okay. It doesn't feel okay. And maybe it's not okay. But what is okay is that evolution and change and transition is still happening among you, within you. Bit by bit, in small, important steps, we are all becoming more and more in tune with who we are, with our value and our impact in the world. So take heart. The yeast is still at work. The seed is still sprouting. There's great value in who we are and who we're becoming. May it be so for you in so many ways. A number of you have some invitations and announcements to share with us this morning, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you to all of you. I'll just spend one moment thanking you for all the ways that you contribute to the life and the work of this community. Whether you do that automatically out of your bank account or with an envelope in the box at the back or online or by e-transfer, all the ways by purchasing grocery cards. It's with gratitude that we work together to create the community that we're creating, and we thank you for that. Just a little note to remind you that the church's email addresses have changed over the last little while. If you still use the old one, it's okay. It comes to the new one, but recognizing that especially in the e-transfers, you'll want to use the new ssucedmonton.com ending to all of our email addresses. Lois, I want you to come first, and then we'll carry on with other announcements as they're here.
Thank you, Chris. Yes. Lois Evans, we are holding an All Candidates Forum here on Thursday, May the 18th at 7 o'clock. I've had confirmation from Lane Larson from the UCP and from Jody Callahoo Stonehouse from the NDP and from Jordan Wilkie from the Green Party that they will attend. They will give their, first of all, they will give their format, and then there will be questions from the floor, and hopefully we will finish by 9 o'clock. I hope that this is for the Rutherford constituency, which borders Calgary Trail to the White Mud Freeway, to White Mud Creek, and to Anthony Henday are the borders for Rutherford constituency. So I hope that all of you can attend that are interested, and it should be a great evening. Thank you.
Is this turned on? Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sandra Hildebrand. The war in Ukraine, earthquake recovery in Turkey and Syria, just a few of the situations around the world where the United Church Global Emergency Response is active. I'm here to encourage us all to support the SSUC Spring Outreach Project as a way of doing our small part. Remember, all financial donations are welcome, but for those $100 or more, you get to bring your stuff and to support efforts to assist Operation Friendship with goods to help with transitional housing. Household goods of all kinds, but not only household goods, items that can go to Find Resale Store, usable sports equipment that can go to Sports Central. You can bring all this to the church during the last week of June. Volunteers will accept your goods, sort them, and arrange for them to be moved on into our community. So please be generous with your financial donation to the United Church's response to global needs, and be generous with your donations of goods to help locally. Volunteer opportunities will be posted later. And as May Kellerman said during the Coldest Night of the Year campaign, a good fundraiser sets goals. I don't know if I'm a good fundraiser or not, but here's a goal. Let's try for $1,000. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Joyce Matson, and I'm chair of the transition team. And we have been leavening our bread for the last 6 months, hearing about dreams and visions and thoughts and concerns of the community that's here and the one that is online. And we're starting to get to the point where we want to put it into loaves and see what kind of bread we're going to make. So I'm inviting you to stay for lunch today. It's a free lunch, but we would be inviting you to join and participate in one of the major 7 items that we have identified as being important to the life and work of the SSUC community. So we're going to ask you to go to where you are most passionate. It's so easy for us to get caught up in I should. You know, I think we should do this or whatever. But if we work with our passions, that's where we tend to find the energy and the enthusiasm to do things. I'm going to just quickly give you the 7 items, and then so you, if you haven't read them already, can be thinking about where you might like to spend your time. We need to grow our youth, children, and young families ministry. We need to refresh our social connections after COVID and all that's gone on. We need to continue our focus on outreach, social justice, and bridge building. We need to continue our move toward reconciliation. We need to continue to support our affirming ministry. We need to continue to have opportunities to grow and explore our expansive spirituality, and that certainly includes the nature piece of it. And we need to continue to provide care and support for those who are part of this community who are in need of help. So those are the topics that we're going to be dealing with today in small groups, and you're going to be actually getting it down to the point where there's some actions that you think we can take that and identify some of the resources that we will need. And then the transition team is going to take all of that information and try to hone it down so we can actually make a presentation to the board so they can start to get things underway for the fall. So please stay for lunch and the conversations.
Good morning. My name is Karen Henderson. Along with Esther Oakes, we are leading a group to look at how to transition our annual cookie walk. We've had the same event for a number of years. It was very successful. It was impacted by COVID. So we're still in the planning stage, but what we're looking at is in the main hall, we'll have an artisan craft fair. The small hall will be a tea room, and the cookies will be pre-packaged. Now, it's early stages, lots of opportunities to come, but what we're asking you to consider now is, first of all, we will have a table in the main hall for Southminster. So if you are particularly crafty, there may be something you want to donate, and all the proceeds from the sale from that table will go back into the congregation. In terms of cookies, those of you who have been involved in the past, we'd have upwards of 800 dozen. Rather than volume, now we're going to be looking at quality. So if you're like me, I would look at recipes that gave me as many cookies as possible. So, 6, 8, 10 dozen. Rather than that, we're asking you to think of what is your favorite recipe, maybe makes 2 dozen. So we're going to be looking at quality. We're also going to be branching out if you want to make fudge, if you want to make rum balls, treats like that. We will continue to share with you our progress in the Morning Messenger, and closer to the time, of course, we'll be looking for volunteers to help us on the day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ruth. I want to remind you that May 11th is the Moose Hide campaign. A dozen years ago, Paul Lacerte and his daughter Raven were harvesting a moose along in their traditional territory in BC along that highway of tears. And together they came up with this idea. They could take the moose hide, tan it, cut it into tiny squares, mustard seed, and they could share it with all the men and boys they knew, asking that each one pledge some way, some tiny thought change, some step that they would do, some learning they would take on to reduce violence against women. And over the dozen years, that has spread, and we are invited to take part in this. At the back, or on the table going out, there's a basket full of small squares and cards that explain it. Take one for yourself and maybe one for your neighbor. May 11th happens on Thursday, after Friday's May 5th Red Dress Day, in support of the women. And if you want to do something in person, downtown in Edmonton, there will be speeches and a march. If you want to do something online, Raven and many other leaders in the Indigenous community will be speaking, and there will be online workshops. Just go to moosehidecampaign.ca.
I just want to let everybody know that the polling station for Rutherford is at 3012 Calgary Trail. It's kind of around the side of a big building, pardon me, and the entrance is facing south. Early voting started May the 2nd, and it's going on until May 23rd. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Bill Hibbard. I'm not here to talk about money for a change. Joy and I joined this congregation about more than 50 years ago, and we got to know a lot of people that are still with us here today. But boy, since that, over the last 50 years, there's been a lot of newcomers, especially in the last few years. And we'd all kind of like to get to know each other better, older and younger. So Mark's been asking for volunteers to host a little Guess Who's Coming to Dessert session. We've got 12 hosts in place. Now we're looking for guests, so we want people to come and enjoy some dessert with us. There'll be sign-up sheets out there at the table this morning, at the rectangular table. We have 12 different times that you could join up. The one I'm looking at here is for 2 o'clock on Sunday the 28th, but I think through all that rest of that week, there'll be various times, afternoons and evenings and that sort of thing. So sign up. There's on the left-hand column of the sheets, there's some information about the place you're going to go to. You won't know who the host is, but it'll tell you that you can meet, for example, inside or outside, depending on the weather, and that host can handle up to 4 guests or 6 guests or whatever, and whether it's suitable for children to come along or probably not. So we want you to sign up for those things and give us your contact information. We'll get hold of you to tell you where you're supposed to go. And if you need a ride, we're going to do our best to try to make sure that happens. So any questions on it, ask Joy and Marilyn. They'll be at the table back there. Thank you. And we'll see you on the 28th or all that week.
Well, there is certainly a lot going on, isn't there? It's very exciting. And I think that makes it even more important that we strengthen our intentions together to become all that we can become and to live out our highest values. So let's do that together. We embrace with gratitude the continual movement of life. Wherever we are on life's journey, we encounter times of searching and finding, of questioning and confidence, of hurt and healing. In all times, may we be open to the challenge and wonder that might nudge us toward transformation. Let's strengthen our intentions to embrace the small, incremental ways that we grow and become, delighting in all the pieces of life that make the whole. In the midst of all of life's transitions, may we find the grace to accept ourselves, affirm each other, and persist in our deepening journey. Let's help each other find the courage to befriend change and expend our energy on living out our values. May it be so.
It's in the ever so small ways that we somehow move from where we were to where we are to where we will be. May we be able to answer the question who we are in ever stronger ways, in ever deepening ways. And so may, as we go, we always choose for love and work for good and know our worth.